I'm 78 years old, and I found out my daughter had a miscarriage 3 months after it happened from her sister-in-law at a baby shower. Not from Chloe herself, not from my son who knew, not from anyone who should have told me. Janice handed me a plastic cup of punch and said, "You must be so relieved it worked out this time." I stared at her, didn't understand. She froze, eyes wide. "Oh God, she didn't tell you." The room tilted, not dramatically, just a slow, nauseating shift in gravity. I gripped the edge of the snack table, pretended to admire the cupcakes while my ears roared. 10 weeks, January, alone. I didn't raise children, I raised guests who learned how to behave in my house without disturbing the host. Chloe was always the careful one. At 4, she spilled apple juice on the white rug and immediately grabbed a towel before I even turned around. I praised her, such a good helper. What I didn't see, the way her small shoulders tensed while she scrubbed, the way she kept glancing at my face to gauge the damage. She wasn't being helpful, she was damage control. At 10, she came home from a sleepover at Sarah's house. I asked the standard questions. "Did you have fun? Sleep okay?" Before I could finish, she said, "Yes, Sarah's mom made pancakes. We watched a movie. I didn't get homesick." She'd answered the questions I hadn't even asked yet. I thought she was thoughtful. She was preempting my worry. She'd learned that my anxiety was a storm she could predict and avoid. At 16, she started coming home from parties early. I'd hear her car pull into the driveway at 10:30 instead of midnight. She'd walk in smelling like perfume and gum, smile bright. "Had a great time." One night I found her in the garage an hour later, sitting on the steps in the dark, still in her party dress. Eyes red, not crying, just hollow. I stood in the doorway, didn't approach, just said, "You'll feel better after sleep." She nodded, wiped her face with the back of her hand, followed me inside. I never asked what happened. She never offered. And that became our rhythm. She'd hide the wound, I'd pretend not to see the blood. Michael learned a different survival skill. He stopped asking for help after I fixed his science fair project in 3rd grade. He'd spent 2 weeks building a volcano out of paper mache. It was lopsided, paint smeared, glitter everywhere. Proud kid energy, messy, alive. I waited until he went to bed, then I rebuilt it. Perfect symmetry, smooth paint, no glitter. Next morning he stared at it on the kitchen table like it was a stranger's project, touched the crater rim with one finger. "You like it?" I asked, beaming. "Yeah," he said, voice flat. "Thanks, Mom." He got a B+. Teacher wrote, "Excellent craftsmanship." He never showed me another project again, not because he lost interest, because he learned his authentic effort wasn't welcome in my presence, only the polished version. I was proud of the order I maintained. No tantrums in my house, no slammed doors, no dramatic teenage rebellion. I told my friends at book club, "My kids are just easy." They'd sigh and say, "You got lucky." I believed them. I never considered I hadn't raised easy children. I'd raised children who learned early that ease was the price of my love, that my comfort mattered more than their authenticity. My husband tried to break through once, not gently, not kindly. We were at dinner, just the two of us, kids at college. I mentioned Chloe had called to say she was thinking of quitting her job. "I told her to wait until she has another offer lined up," I said. "No sense being impulsive. She'll regret it later." Mark put his fork down, didn't look at me, stared at his plate like it held answers. Ellen, he said, voice low, she didn't call you to get advice. She called because she's miserable, and you made her feel stupid for feeling it. I stiffened, felt heat rise in my neck. I was being practical. Someone has to be. No, he said, looked up then, eyes tired. You were being a fucking editor. You've been editing them their whole lives, their feelings, their stories, their pain. You don't get to decide which parts of them are acceptable to bring home. I pushed my chair back, too loud. That's not fair. I've sacrificed everything for this family. Sacrifice, he almost laughed. Not a happy sound. You call it sacrifice when you never let them see you struggle? When you made the house so clean they were afraid to track dirt inside? That's not sacrifice, Ellen. That's control wearing an apron. I didn't speak to him for 2 days after that. Not because he was cruel, because he was right. And the truth felt like standing naked in a room I'd spent 40 years decorating to hide myself. I doubled down instead of softening. Told myself he was being dramatic, midlife nonsense. Told myself my children were fine, they had good jobs, stable marriages, healthy firstborns. What more did they need from me? Love wasn't about messy feelings. Love was about reliability. And I was the most reliable person they knew. The miscarriage was the fracture I couldn't smooth over. When I finally asked Chloe about it, 3 weeks after the baby shower, she didn't get angry, she didn't cry. We were in her kitchen, sunlight through the window, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea gone cold. Yeah, she said, it happened in January. I was 10 weeks along. Why didn't you tell me? My voice cracked. Genuine hurt, real betrayal. Your own mother, how could you shut me out? She studied her hands, then looked up, not with accusation, with something worse, resignation. The look you give a broken appliance you've stopped expecting to work. Mom, when I told you I was stressed last December, you said, your body knows what it's doing, just relax. When I said work was overwhelming in January, you said, strong women push through. When I canceled Sunday dinner twice in a row, you texted, everything okay? You seem off. She paused, let the words hang. I didn't want to hear what you'd say about losing a baby. I just couldn't bear one more thing you'd try to fix. I opened my mouth to defend myself, to say I would have dropped everything. I would have been there. I would have understood. But the look on her face stopped me. It wasn't anger, it was pity. And in that moment, I saw myself through her eyes. A woman so committed to solutions, she'd become dangerous to anyone who needed to fall apart. Not malicious, not cruel, just unsafe. You can show up for every birthday and still be absent for the moments that actually build a soul. I went through the photo albums that night, not looking for happy memories, looking for evidence, proof I'd been present. But all I saw were performances. Chloe at 7 smiling for the camera while hiding a scraped knee behind her back. Michael at 12, arm around me for the school picture while his other hand stayed clenched at his side. Ben at 15, laughing in the backyard while his eyes stayed locked on the back door, calculating his escape route. They'd been strangers in my house for decades, and I'd been too busy keeping the floors clean to notice they were walking on eggshells. Mark left me 5 years ago, not for another woman. He just packed a suitcase one Tuesday morning while I was at the grocery store. Left a note on the kitchen counter. I can't live in a museum anymore. Everything's preserved. Nothing's alive. I called him ungrateful. Told our kids he was having a midlife crisis. Now I understand he was just the first one to suffocate. He saw the truth before I did. I wasn't building a home. I was curating an exhibit. and everyone in it had learned to pose. Last month, Ben's wife had their second child, a boy, healthy, 10 fingers, 10 toes. Ben texted me the news at 3:17 a.m. I called immediately, voice bright. "Tell her I'm so happy for you both." He said, "Yeah, will do," and hung up. I didn't think anything of it until Sarah mentioned at Sunday dinner that Ben had been up all night pacing the hospital waiting room, that he'd cried when he held his son for the first time, that he'd whispered to the baby, "I won't do to you what was done to me." I dropped my fork. "Done to him?" I said. "What does that mean?" Sarah looked at her plate, didn't answer, just pushed green beans around with her fork. And in that silence, I finally understood. My son didn't see me as cold. He saw me as a threat to his son's softness, and he was protecting his child from me. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was sad, because my body finally caught up to the truth my mind had been avoiding. I am not a safe place for the people I love most, and they have spent their lives building lives that don't require my presence. 2 weeks ago, I tried to change. Chloe came over to fix my Wi-Fi router again. She sat on the floor surrounded by blinking lights, fingers moving fast. I brought her tea, set it down beside her. She didn't look up, didn't say thank you, just kept working. And I wanted to say something, to bridge the gap. So I sat on the floor beside her, not too close, and said, "You know, you don't always have to have it figured out with me." She froze, fingers hovering over the router, didn't look at me, just said, "Okay." And that was it. No breakthrough, no tears, no hug. Just a woman who'd spent 48 years learning to protect herself from her mother, facing a new, unfamiliar version of that mother, and not knowing how to trust it. She left an hour later, didn't hug me goodbye, just said, "It should hold now," and walked to her car. I stood at the window and watched her drive away, and I didn't cry. I just felt the weight of it all. The decades of small corrections, the solutions offered too fast, the love expressed only through competence. I built a house with clean floors and locked doors, and my children learned to live outside. I don't know if it's too late. I don't know if some distances can be crossed backwards. I tried last Tuesday, called Chloe just to say I was thinking of her. She answered on the fourth ring, voice polite, distant. We talked for 7 minutes, weather, her job, my hip pain, safe topics, clean edges. Neither of us mentioned the miscarriage. Neither of us mentioned that night on her kitchen floor. We just performed the roles we've perfected, mother and daughter who know how to be polite strangers. And when I hung up, I sat in my silent house and realized the hardest truth. It's not that they won't forgive me. It's that they've already adapted to a life where my presence isn't necessary. And adaptation is harder to undo than anger. Anger burns hot and fades. Adaptation becomes architecture. And you can't tear down walls people have learned to live inside. I'm 78 years old. I have 3 children who send birthday cards and show up for holidays. They are polite, they are successful, they are strangers, and the space between us isn't empty. It's full of everything I never let them bring home. The tears I called dramatic, the uncertainty I called weakness, the messy, unpolished truth of who they are. I spent my life believing I was building a home. Turns out I was building a waiting room. And the people I love most learned to wait quietly until they could leave. And now they've left, and the waiting room is finally, completely mine.